Library games. Very good. You like folks in a woman's basketball. Jingle there.
Yeah, well, I
Every day I don't get sick.
Just
Sunday.
about.
As long as it gets that out of Usually the teacher is out. The staff is out. I just keep getting calls. Can you come out?
Morning, John.
Either bad morale or something. So it's, yeah, I mean, you get bad morale.
Oh, yeah.
Particularly morale time, yeah.
Might have a t-shirt that's.
Well, a t-shirt would be good. It's a Wednesday. Too much going on. Yeah, I miss it, but I don't,
Yeah,
It's so hard, and just look around and go, oh. Good morning.
I think it's so nice to walk out.
It's nice to walk out.
So if you don't share the t-shirt, just take a photo. Okay, I'll do that.
So I'm gonna have everybody slide down together. We're gonna do some discussion today. It'll be easier if everybody's close by to each other. No, seriously, you gotta be close because you're gonna turn to a neighbor and talk.
I had cuddle in front of the people.
You can cuddle if you want.
Morning, Lois.
Louis,
Yep, you
you
can.
expressed interest in going to women's in a football, basketball.
Yeah.
He's going 6 o'clock.
Tonight?
6 o'clock.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
We're welcoming this morning our own John Ryan, and John is going to lead
my
a two-week
gosh.
discussion on
Yeah.
reclaiming wholeness,
Gosh.
hospitality,
He is so
care, and relationships in a divided world. Thank you, John.
No fun facts about me or anything?
What's that?
No fun facts?
Oh, well, you're the first to tell them.
So we're gonna do something just a little bit not like what we normally do at the covenant class. We're gonna do some discussion. This curriculum is called Reclaiming Wholeness. It's by a group of Work of the People. If you don't know them, they are a faith-based organization that produces films and short stories that are usually pretty thought-provoking with the likes of Richard Rohr, Brueggemann, people like that. The lesson that we're going to look at today is called Crisis and Connection, Finding Common Ground in a Polarized World. And I'd like to kind of pick up on what Graham did, because it was a good segue. And I think this class is really, this curriculum is helpful. The author of this curriculum is Suzanne. Anybody want to guess that? I've been trying to.
Stadil is on my.
Is it Stadil?
I have
Okay.
friends with that name.
That's not how I would have said it, so I'm glad I asked. She has BS from Southern Methodist and then did additional graduate work in the School of Theology and Sociology. She is considered, and I had not heard of her before, but the godmother of the Enneagram. Has anybody heard of her before? Nobody? Okay. She lives in Dallas. She's a member of the United Methodist Church. Her husband is a pastor in the UMC. She says, we are in a relationship crisis because there is no third way. We are stuck between it's my way or your way, because there's no our way anymore. Which I thought was helpful. She bases everything she's going to talk about in the next 2 weeks off of the Enneagram. And I am not an Enneagram expert. It is basically, if you've heard of Myers-Briggs, it is similar. It's a psychology test. And it kind of helps us understand who we are and what we do and why we do. And there are nine personality types according to the Enneagram. And they are reformer, perfectionist. You guys slide down, Leah. We're talking to each other today. Helper, giver, achiever, performer, individualistic, romantic. You like how I did that? Investigator, observer, loyalist, loyal skeptic, enthusiast, epicure, challenger, perfecter, and peacemaker and mediator. I've taken the Enneagram, and anybody want to guess what I am?
Can you be more than one?
No, you're one type, and then you have your kind of secondary, and it's not necessarily, kind of what they call your wings, what's on the right or left. Most pastors, most teachers are helper givers, and that's what I am. And my secondary one, I think if I remember right, is loyalist or loyal skeptic. She says, the reality is your Enneagram personality is determined by why you do what you do, not by what you do. And it's determined by how you see. Now, there is a video. It's about 13 minutes long. It's really good. Cannot get the sound to work in the room. I rebooted the system. I opened the drawers and looked around, and it worked when Sean Henry taught. I do not know why I cannot get it to work, but I was able to get it to play out of the computer speaker, and I have a microphone shoved up against it. So I think we should be able to hear. I'm hoping. We'll see.
I open at least half of my teaching gigs right now by saying I think we are culturally and globally in relationship crisis. And I think it's because we're busy, too busy. And we think we can have more than is realistic of everything. More money, more friends, more food, more trinkets, more of everything. And I think we're in a relationship crisis because we're more polarized than we've ever been. And I think we're more polarized than we've ever been because there is no third way, as Richard Rohr would say. In fact, we're stuck between it's either my way or your way. There isn't our way anymore. And so churches are dividing and communities are dividing and families are dividing because we're not generous enough with one another to sit and listen and make space for difference until we discover a part of the path where we can walk together. And I am grateful that I have the wisdom and the opportunity to teach the Enneagram because understanding that people don't see what you see and they don't process the same way you do ultimately means that if you can understand how other people take in information, you can understand why they don't think what you think. And then you have a conversation instead of a disconnection. And it requires time and patience, and there doesn't seem to be much security for folks in we are. It seems that for some reason that I don't understand, people feel more secure in a place that's I am. And I don't feel that security there at all. If I'm not part of a movement that's bigger than me, an idea that's bigger than me, or relationships with people that make my world bigger, then it's the most frightening place for me. And I'm not sure of much of anything, except that God is good. I'm not expected to be perfect or good all the time. And there is goodness in everybody. It just doesn't always show itself first. Or maybe it does show itself first and I can't see it first.
Isn't it like that Bible says that we're supposed to be one?
Well, it's real hard. It's really hard. But I think we are one, we just don't know it. For a while in Life in the Trinity Ministries, we had a publication, and I usually wait for some kind of inspiration to name things, and I've named some things very badly, which means I missed the inspiration evidently. But we did a whole day thing on how to name this publication, and we ended up naming it Holon, Holon. And that word means this, that scientists have not found anything in the universe that isn't whole and complete unto itself and at the same time part of a bigger whole. And that is certainly true for us as humans. So I don't feel like I ever do anything, ever, that doesn't affect other people, ever. And that means I'm not just here on my own and I don't just get to do whatever I want to do.
Well, who's the winner then, Suzanne?
Well, the community is the winner when I can be part of a whole.
Communism?
I think there are parts of every philosophy that have value. That's probably going to get me in trouble, but I do think that's true. And so what the Enneagram teaches me is about how people see. So, there's all this chatter about what number are you, and everybody thinks there's a shortcut to learning the Enneagram, and all of that is bad information. And the reality is your Enneagram personality identification is determined by why you do what you do, not by what you do, and it's determined by how you see. So, for example, my husband is a type that sees two sides to everything, absolutely everything, and I don't. So when I'm sure I'm right about something and he suggests that there's another side, then I understand more about how he sees, and that makes my way of seeing better. But when he sees that sometimes there's a better way that is the best of the options, then he's able to see how I see. Some people are very relational, some people are not. Some people have a lot of energy, some people don't. Some people are capable of neutrality, some people are not.
Capable of what?
Neutrality.
What is that?
Not having something be right or wrong, but just holding a neutral space. And I'm kind of good at choosing between things. I'm not real good at choosing between all good options. But I don't know that I'm very good at neutral. I don't ever feel like I'm in neutral. Like I see the world and think, well, I like that. I don't know if I agree with that. And I'm struggling as I get older to start with space for everybody. Instead of, well, I like you and I didn't connect with you and I like you and I don't quite agree with you. I have a story that I tell frequently about the fact that I'm mindful of a pastor of a big steeple church who says things that I generally don't agree with at all. And so I decided my spiritual practice would be that I would listen to him every Sunday morning. And until I can ask him to have lunch with me, and not need him to believe what I believe, then I'm the things I don't like about him.
It seems like a waste of time to do that. Unless it's good food, I guess.
It's not good food necessarily. I don't think it would be a waste of time, but I'm not there yet. And I don't know if I'll get there, but I'm trying by taking in things I don't agree with instead of just supporting what I already think with people who I know right and think like I do. Seems pretty limiting, actually. And we're so divided. We're so divided from one another, and we're also sure we're right. And I kind of live by the idea that if you're absolutely sure that you're right, you're probably wrong. It seems like if you have real wisdom, you would always wonder if you're right.
What are we missing out on? About being right?
Besides community, you can't build a community if everybody has to think the same thing. So I think what we're missing out on is the appreciation that we have the opportunity to have for the diversity of everything. The guy who does my nails for me every 2 weeks is Vietnamese.
Is it good right now?
They are real good, look. Good, huh? Well, what's best about them is the relationship between me and the Vietnamese man who makes them look like this for me every 2 weeks. And what I've learned from him is we have so much. It's our responsibility to be grateful and happy. And what I've learned from him is respect for my elders, because that's a cultural way of seeing the world for his culture. And what I've learned from him is that when I'm running late, he says, it's all good. When somebody else is late, he tells them it's all good. And when I say, oh my gosh, I have to leave town, I got to sign books, my hands are going to look terrible, can you work me in? He says, sure I can. Hands are important. And you know, hands aren't important, but they're important to me, right? It's like, if you can't hear and make space for what's important to other people, then how are we going to be in ministry with one another and to one another? So he teaches me all the time. And I just listen. And that's such a nice break from being on a stage telling people what I think. You know, what about what everybody else thinks? So we're back to why I feel lonely, I think. Because so much of the time I'm offering what I believe is mine to talk about and offer, because I believe it'll make the world a better place. But the distance between getting to be with the same people every week and being with different people in every city that I go to is sometimes very not just lonely, but isolating, maybe. So maybe the reason I want to talk about community and relationships when I teach is because that's what I miss when I'm teaching. And I'm relational by nature, so that's kind of an extra gift that comes with my personality. And I find that people respond to kindness and they respond to me. So maybe I'm teaching other people to be relational with people you're never going to see again. I don't know. I just know that to be part of a larger community, I have to draw on what I've learned from being part of a smaller community. In our family, there are 19 of us now. 19. And we range in age from 7 months to 71. And in our community, we use a line from an old Bob Dylan song, and it is, how are we going to keep each other forgiven and free? And we work stuff out, and We don't let things fester, and we make everybody get along. It's like a family rule. Figure it out and get back to the table. And I don't ever want to presume to speak for God or God's angels or God's representatives, but it feels in my heart like God wants to look at us and say, figure it out and get back to the table. And somehow we've missed that part of the journey. So we're not figuring things out. We are divided and entitled and sure we're right. People are so sure that they're right, and my question is, what if you're wrong?
What's the first step back to the table?
Not believing you're right about everything, being open-minded, and having space for the way other people see.
What was your initial reaction to that film?
John, could I ask a question? I was late coming in. Who is she?
Should I? We're just going to speak loud. Her name is Suzanne
Stabile.
Stabile. She is a sociologist and works with the Enneagram, which is a personality test based out of Dallas.
I loved her honesty. It was just so refreshing and chokes you up to hear somebody just say whatever's on her mind without some kind of script. And she was just fully present.
Yeah. What else?
I have a question.
Yes, ma'am?
What, if you're relational, what's the opposite of being relational?
Siloed.
Siloed, isolationist.
A lone person?
Yeah.
A person who appreciates being by him or herself? Okay.
One thing that struck me was when she said something along the lines of, you can't have community if you all think the same.
Yeah. I get that too.
And what struck me about that is, and just an aside before I go on to this, her last statement about what we need to do, I would add, turn off social media, Fox News, MSNBC, all of that. Just turn it off. Don't listen to it. If we're going to have community and be able to talk. But back to that. So on social media about community, after the election, I saw someone say, very excited about the election, and say, it is good if maybe we'll only have one party and we'll all think alike. That's what we need in this country. And it horrified me because it's like the last thing we need is for us all to think alike. So that statement with her saying you can't have community if you do, I think was very striking.
And it's easy. I probably shouldn't say this because I'm going to be on the internet, but oh well. I would so much love to be a biblical literalist. Because you don't have to think. It's easy. You don't have to think. But what I worry about is that kind of slippery slope. Okay, Jonah and the whale. In my heart of my heart, do I think Jonah happened? Probably not. I don't want to say never, but probably not. But if you start chucking out stuff you don't like or you don't disagree, if you disagree with, where do you stop? And I think it's the same way with the sense of we have to have, one of the things I've always been sad about, at least the time that I've worked in the church, which has been since the mid-90s, with the conservative element of the church splitting, we've lost a huge voice in our church. I think we can know who God is and what God's will for us is when we are all at the table. What are you going to say, sir?
I have a soapbox and you tell me to be quiet. Sooner, probably. I taught in public schools for 42 years. I see, as I still volunteer in the school I taught in, and the school I went to, very different place. Large minority presence, not just African American, high poverty, and a large number of the people who could be at that school have abandoned it for charter schools and private schools. It's still a good school. They have 20 AP classes. They have a full IB program. They score well. I'm working with a kid who's Blackfoot Indian and Mexican right now, and a black kid who are brilliant. They can't go to college because they don't have any cash. We're working on looking for stuff. But it's 20 years ago, that school was a mix. Those kids would have been there, but so would the wealthy people on the lake. And they're gone. Huff has some, it was North Mecklenburg where I taught. Huff has some of a mix, but not the broad mix that North used to have. And I miss that atmosphere. A lot of you went to North, or your children or your next door neighbor went there. And I don't know how to regain it. I do know that when the district, I know who did it, and he's told me, when the district lines were drawn, they were drawn very much to make Huff an upper middle class high school and North and Hopewell high poverty. And if you look at the lines, you see a zigzag that misses some neighborhoods and grabs others. That's a district line that's, I guess, 15, 18 years old now. But I missed that. I listened to her and I thought, I know exactly what I missed there.
Yeah. Thank you. Any other thoughts on the video?
I like the idea that we are already one, we just don't know it.
Yeah.
And it struck me that the table she talked about, I pictured communion, and it's already set. We just have to figure out how to get there.
I think that often the way people think is based on a gut feeling. Are they fear-based or are they love-based? And I think you can break a lot of people down into those categories. I hate that phrase, but you know what I mean. And the people I have found in my life that I struggle with trying to understand, I have realized they're fear-based.
Yeah.
Regardless of what they say, the fundamental motivation is fear. And so I can't connect on any level with them because I try to be love-based.
Yeah. Interesting. Thank you.
John, I think I could go back, and when I was around sociology during my college years in the 60s, they talked about taboos. And the taboos were certain things in society that the great majority would not violate. They may be sexual taboos, they may be racial taboos, but people generally, by their race or their their class said, well, you just can't violate that. And over time, these taboos have gone away to a large degree. I mean, you know, homosexuality's been accepted by a lot, but it hasn't been accepted by everybody, by a long shot. And so I think the taboos have kind of broken down, and we have real disagreements about serious things. And it's hard to get beyond that. When you talk to somebody, if these subjects come up, some are going to be on one side and some are going to be on the other, and there is no in between.
But it used to be okay that we could be on opposite sides and still could find common ground. At least it feels like to me. And this is not the time to get into but what's changed and why? And how do we walk it back where you and I can disagree on something, but I don't go out and badmouth you and the same thing. We could still shake hands and sit together. I'm going to tell you a story in a little bit about something in my own life. We should have time. What I want you to do is turn to a neighbor and in twos and threes, whatever you want. How did the video connect to your own experiences, and where do you see this relationship crisis showing up in your own life or community? In really just about 4 minutes. So go ahead and go. I know. We've taken a lot longer than I thought.
Well, here's one that I probably don't believe there was a chosen
For them.
The real concept. They were really very different.
That is
specific people about relationships between us and other people.
Oh, I know. I don't know my neighborhood.
Share my biases.
But I also said,
I don't know. I think you and I would probably agree on all of those other things. Basically the same amount of money as Italy. Yeah.
Yeah.
We can only go take care of it.
That's Yeah.
I saw that.
Something can't be done. But there are people that
So take about another minute to wrap up your conversation. All right, I'm gonna ask you to come back because we've got to end right on time because I'm in worship at 11 o'clock. So, and this is just kind of general discussion for all of us. How does Suzanne's view of the relationship or crisis resonate with what you're seeing in the world around you?
Say that again.
How does the relationship? How does Suzanne's view of the relationship crisis resonate with what you're seeing in the world around you? Go ahead, Missy.
This, I'm repeating this, but
I was gonna quote her.
we live in a community that's it's a constructive community at the times. And we're very much divided during the election. And the Democrats knew who they were, and they talked together, and the Republicans had their own focus on. And I must say, the day after the election, after the shock, what I realized, we're back as a community again. Mainly because we have to live together and we have found things in common.
we have. No, I couldn't quite hear. We have or we haven't found things in common?
We have.
Name.
Whether, I'm talking about something, a hip replacement or, that kind of, I mean, you just know these people and you see them enough to know that they get more common than politics. So how do we create community is what I want to know without forcing it like that.
You have to have a hurricane.
Yeah, I was gonna say,
Hurricane.
That's right.
Next week, she's going to talk about hospitality as a way to do that.
That's right.
What were you going to say something? I don't want to.
I don't know how you get this message to younger generation. We're of a generation that gets it and wants it because we have it. The younger generation with social media, I mean, we might as well be speaking Greek. They don't understand the concept because they're behind the screen where no accountability is given. And so they can just get angry and get on with it and have a million likes and think they're part of a community. But it's a community of empty.
Well, their relationships are their age. They're not looking at us. They're, you know.
Right. How do we get this message to that age?
You know, community is not only this way, it's that way too, in terms of generations. And it can be these layers that are impenetrable all the way down the line. We haven't got community at all. I mean, we'll die off and the next generation will move up, but there's still no community there.
Good. Somebody say
Well, I
something?
was just thinking, what about church? That's a place where we have all ages. Maybe we need to do a better job of blending them together, but we do a mighty good job.
And sometimes, I wonder, so my own story, I have dear friends from where I served before Atlanta. Some of the first friends, a married couple, some of the first friends I made when I moved there. We have been through thick and thin, parents, dying and whatnot. Their youngest child was born the summer I left to go to Atlanta. They named the child after me, my godson. And I tried to say, Presbyterians don't have godson, and the reply was, we named it after you. I held him within an hour after he was born. I was in the next room. The election came. Always politically we're on opposite sides. Didn't matter. And then the pandemic hit and things just derailed. I didn't talk to these people for a year and a half because I was so mad and frustrated and knew what they believed when that Presbyterian church split. I'm trying not to say the town. When it split, they stayed PCUSA because, socially, they are fairly middle of the road to progressive. The main part of the church went evangelical Presbyterian. It bothered me so much, I ended up writing a sermon about it. And I know you're not supposed to write a sermon to one person, but this time I did. And I emailed them or texted them the night before and said, hey, I need you to listen to me preach tomorrow. And that's what started our relationship again. And we had to come back and compartmentalize those things that separate us. And it was, and you may agree or disagree, but it was my choice that the relationships with these, with my godniece and godson and their parents were more important than where they were and where I was politically. I mean, these people I went on vacation with every year. And I finally kind of made the community aspect was more important than who they vote for.
Yeah, John, I think that's so important. And so you're seeing the fuller person than just outside of politics. So it was reaching out and seeing something bigger. And I think that one of the ways forward in the future, and I think Sterling, you mentioned we need a hurricane, or someone just a hurricane. We need, to find something bigger than just this, right now in the election, we've been stuck here, but when you find something bigger, if a hurricane hits, everyone's out there helping one another. I think that nonprofits and volunteering, when you get with people who think differently. I was talking to my neighbor who's a Democrat, and he was working on this, sending all this food to the mountains during the hurricane. And it was a lot of people with Trump t-shirts, and they were all doing the same thing. And so everybody was happy and working together, and it was just like, well, they're bigger than just their Trump t-shirts, because he was not a Trump person. But he really liked these people, and it was just, he saw them more than just their politics. So I think it's the experience, the experiences that are bigger that we are involved. Maybe it's sports and in schools, where you get to know people who think differently and you know more about them than just their politics.
Well, they need to quit wearing the Trump t-shirt.
What did you say?
They need to quit wearing those.
Suzanne talks about that we need to start with space for everybody. Any idea how you could practice? How could this practice show up in your daily interactions? This idea of having space for everyone?
Well, I think, John, recently, I had to have some welding done. Project for the Lands Conservancy. We had a sign that was broken. And I've had an acquaintance with a welder who lives up in Iredell County. I showed up to get this job done, had talked to him over the years, and obviously he was an avid Trumper. We had the most delightful conversation. I spent an hour with him that day while we were talking, with absolutely no problem at all. I mean, we're just two people. And our politics, never became an issue. I mean, it wasn't even a part of the conversation. And I think if we're able to enjoy people and see them as our neighbors, our friends, and I think the idea that if we operate from perceived love instead of fear, that there's a chance, but it's hard to overcome sometimes.
It is. It is. I'll tell you one story on myself. I am not proud of this story. I will admit right away. But I will be as unfiltered as I can. My dog is deathly afraid of fireworks. I mean, like shaking puddle on the ground. 2 years ago, New Year's Eve, I had, the fireworks had stopped for a while. I'd gotten him outside to go to the bathroom, and I'm thinking, just go outside, get it done. Don't bother about sniffing. Don't worry about steps, and then look around. Just get it done. So just getting ready to lift his leg, and the neighbors were literally right over, like on the other side of the street, on the side street, let off a string of firecrackers. I was so frustrated. I let out a string of profanities that at my neighbor, and it went on for a while, and then I stopped, and he went, "Sorry," and then I just started up again. And then I slammed the door, sliding glass door into the house. I can't believe I'm telling this. So Saturday night, Sunday, go to church. It is, Georgia has won. I see this guy walking around, and he says, like, "Go Dogs," and he comes up to me, and of course, I've got, it's a fairly nice day, so I'm just wearing, shirt, no coat, but I have my name tag on, and he comes up to me and says, "I think I owe you an apology." Wow. And I went, oh, like it dawned on me, and I went, oh no, I think I owe you the apology. Then I see him look down at my name tag, and I said, supposing you've probably never been cursed out by a pastor before, have you? And he went, that was a first for me. He and I are completely opposite. We've had gun conversations, politics operations, but because we had this community creating an event where, I apologized and he said, no, I get it. I understand. He said, I'm talking a lot of fireworks, but I felt badly for you because I could tell you were so frustrated. We don't have anything in common, but we can have a civil conversation and say, we agreed to disagree, and it's okay. It is, they've got a son, and the son come over and play with my dog sometimes. But we've created that space. She talks about the absence of this third way in her video, where it's either you or me. There's no longer this idea that it's ours. And how do we get back to creating a third way in relationships where we can hear and where we can respect, and we can still be mad that they're wearing a Trump t-shirt that we don't like, but it doesn't mean they're a bad person. I think that's what we're going to talk about some next week with some hospitality. Any comments? I'm going to finish early because I do have to get over and figure out where my robe is. I think I know where it is. Any thoughts?
I'm not sure what the Enneagram does for any of this. I mean, maybe that, it felt like, it said at the beginning, this is a pseudoscience, and I thought, well, and then I don't know how it overlays all the things we've been talking about, really. I mean, tells us we're all different, okay, but we already do that.
I think she probably is using it to help understand why people do what they do, and also what we do and how we react.
And how we see it.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, I think this has been really an important focus point for us on recognizing it's how we see things. So how do we see the other, and your example of the dog,
Please don't think less of me on that one.
Yeah, and also the people that used to be so close to where you're the godfather of their children, it's how you choose to see the other person.
Now, I will say we are not as close as we used to be, but we don't have any ill feelings. When my godson, he's a college freshman, and he had this big athletic signing to play sports scholarship, and I went down, and his parents said, "Oh, don't tell him. Let's just make it a surprise that you're coming in for it." And it was one of the best days I've had in a long time. It was so much fun. But it's creating this third way. How do we create this new norm? I don't know. I'm gonna have us as we prepare for our closing prayer. I'm gonna have you take a deep breath, exhale slowly, and rest in the presence of God. Allow yourself to be held in the love of God, fully accepted as you are. Be still and know that you are deeply loved. Good gracious God, we give you thanks for this time, for this hour of conversation. Help us to reclaim that third way. Help us to find common ground. Help us to see how others see. Help us to understand how others think. Help us to know and to project that community is so much more important. Help us to be one in you. In your name we pray. Amen. Just a couple quick announcements. Next week, Making Space for Others, hospitality is the path to true community. Most important, next week, you'll be back in the congregation house. If you come here, the building will be locked. So back in the congregation house where you can have coffee. And it will be in the window. And happy Thanksgiving. All right, thank you, friends.
Yeah.
Yeah, I wanted to do that.
It just really.
Didn't have as big a crowd as I thought.
It's all stuff. Usually.